Best, I'm
Well,
letting everybody back in.
Great.
I
that
sent a
was
note to
something.
David and told him. I sent a note to David and told him we just got shut down.
Hmm.
20,
So everybody, we really apologize. We've got an issue going on with Zoom that we're trying to troubleshoot. So thanks for rejoining.
I saw that happen to one other session today.
Well, thank you again for everybody for your flexibility and coming back. All right. Okay, so. Oh, now I'm hearing a weird echo. All right. And it stopped. All right. Oh boy, this is definitely the world we are all living in right now. Okay, so I think we'll get started and, knock on wood, Zoom will let us continue. But, in the event that this happens again, please do rejoin. And again, I apologize for the technical problem here. So just to make sure that you are in the right session, we're going to spend the next hour talking about the new Kuali export control module. And to do that, you'll be hearing from me, Bess Jensen, and from my colleague, Travis. So just to introduce ourselves briefly, I'm one of the customer success managers for the research suite for Kuali. I've been working with research administration, primarily with software, for the last 17 years. The first 10 years, I was at Cornell's medical school, and for the last 7 years, I've been helping institutions select and implement and use ERA software. And so it would be me or someone else on my team who would be working with you to implement the export control module and continue your use of it once you've gone live. And now for Travis to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Travis Schneeberger. I originally started Kuali at Michigan State University, and I've bounced around a few different products, the financial system, research, RICE, and now I'm back on research, and I'm an engineer, so I'm working on the product features and working with people like Bess to make sure that we develop good software.
So our plan for today is to first take a look at the export control challenges. So it's basically, what's happening and what are the challenges being faced just in export control management in general. Then we're going to take a look specifically at the Kuali Research Export Control Management module, why it exists, how it came to be, and how it fits into the rest of the suite. Then we're going to take a look at a live demo just to get a sense of what can be tracked and how the module can be used. And then a brief discussion at the end about what's coming next. And really want to encourage people to ask questions along the way. Probably the best way to do that would be through the chat. So just add your comments and we'll answer as many questions as we can in the session, and we can always follow up with you afterwards as well. So to talk briefly about basically the challenges, why is export control something that we're talking about now? So this is really a summary slide here that gets at a couple of surveys that Kuali did in 2020, actually both through Incura conferences. The first one was at the PRA, FRA, and then the follow-up survey that we did was at the Incura annual. And these were really pretty casual surveys that we did when people stopped by the booth. And so what we found through these surveys and conversations is that institutions are increasingly concerned about needing to manage export control, and that actually that level of concern grew from the first survey to the second. That enforcement has gone up substantially, and that interest has risen interest in systems and having systems that can manage this information has grown accordingly. And there's every reason to expect that both enforcement and the need to manage are going to continue to grow and expand. These recent surveys revealed that educating researchers about export control is the #1 concern that research administrators have related to export control management, and that managing data relating to export control is the second biggest concern. And so that's really what we're going to be, of course, talking about today, is how do we manage that data? And of course, the distributed workforce that we're all finding ourselves under, due to the pandemic, has increased the need for electronic systems so information can be managed and shared remotely with the appropriate security measures in place and transparency to the people who need to see the information that's out there. And of course, as part of this recording, these slides are available after the session as well. So,
All right.
oh, sorry. Oh. Sorry, Travis, your turn.
No, and I'll take it from here. This I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about how Kuali Research Export Control Management System came to be. And any of you who have been involved with Kuali for any period of time knows that we like to tell these kind of stories. And so probably over, if you want to go to the next slide, Bess. Oh. So this highlights the community of Kuali, and it's probably over a year or so ago, we started hearing talks within the engineering group in research that CSU was planning to go to the cloud. And so we started talking about the challenges to get them there, how to deal with the data migration and the customizations. And one of the topics that came up was export control. CSU had built an entire module based on Kuali technology to manage export control. But this was going to be a challenge because as they're bringing their application to the cloud, what are they going to do with their new export control, or their custom export control module? And so we started talking internally if this would be a module that we'd be interested in. And so fast forward a little bit, we had an FTP conference that I attended, and there was a lot of talk about foreign influence. That was a big topic there. And I'm sure some of you have seen headlines about foreign influence and some of the challenges at institutions. And so this got me excited to, explore what CSU's export control module is all about. And this is really the story of Kuali, working with institutions to, collaborate, solve problems. And this was a perfect opportunity to do just that. And so we could provide benefit to CSU by hosting and maintaining their export control module. And we could provide value to the community by, bringing that up to a way that wouldn't just work for CSU, but for many customers. And so after the FTP conference, we went back to, we had what is called an innovation week. And we took that innovation week to evaluate their software, get it up and running, add some enhancements to it, like REST APIs, or the ability to turn it off if you're not using it. And we were able to bring it into our infrastructure. From there, export control becomes a part of the Kuali suite. So next. So the thing that you get from our export control is a familiar piece of software. So if you're familiar with subaward or award or proposal development, you will be familiar immediately with export control. It integrates with KIM, which is our identity management system, workflow, The UI is built with the KNS. It has lookups, inquiries, and of course we added on REST APIs. It is integrated. So it's integrated with all the other modules. So you can, for example, create a Word document and then on the compliance tab, create an export control. Or you can take an export control document and link it to an existing, say, sub-award or proposal. It's also integrated with visual compliance. And I know that visual compliance is a very popular piece of software. So we have that integration. And it's also real software. And this was, again, part of the story that Kuali always liked to tell. We didn't just invent software systems, but we took real working pieces of software and we evolved them under Kuali. So this, for example, is a working piece of software that CSU uses. And so we took that contribution and now we can offer it to you all. And we're confident that it'll work for you. Next. And this is just a graphic that shows the various pieces of our Kuali research suite. So you can see that there are three main pieces: compliance, dashboard, reporting, and sponsored programs. And under those umbrellas, I, for example, work on sponsored programs, and we have pre-award, post-award, and now export control. And under these various modules, for example, pre-award, you've got proposal development, and it integrates directly with export control. Same with a post-award, award, and sub-award. They integrate with export control. And if there isn't an integration available, as I mentioned, we have REST APIs so that you could create a new export control from a homegrown system if you want, or from some other system. Next. Next. And I will let Bess take this from here.
Great, thank you. So now just to talk briefly about, basically what can the Kuali export control module do for you? So what we've been finding by talking to people in the community is that it's pretty common for this information to be stored currently in lots of disparate places, some of which could be unsecured, and that it's also then not easily accessible to everybody who needs to see the information or connected. And of course, the challenge when you're storing information in places like emails is that works real well when your employees are in place, but when you have staff turnover, it's pretty easy for those things to get lost and for people to not be able to reference them easily. And of course, that creates a pretty big risk of non-compliance. So the difference here is that the export control module is one secure location that gives you a place to capture, track, monitor, and analyze all of your export control activities. And as Travis said, it's integrated with the rest of the sponsored programs suite and with visual compliance. And part of that integration is that it has access to robust permissioning, so you can control who can create and edit and view information. And also, we've got a number of configurable tables, some of which are the shared tables that would already be utilized for those other modules. And then, of course, a handful of new tables as well. And so the idea here, again, is to put everything in one organized, secure place, which is going to increase collaboration, reduce stress, labor and uncertainty, and as a result, reduce risk. So what we're going to do now is move over to a live demo so we can take a look at the system and give you a sense of some of these things that we've been talking about at a higher level so far. Okay, the first thing I'd like to show you is the all links page within the sponsored programs portion of the Kuali Research Suite. And so this is the page that many people are probably familiar with who are looking at this right now. This is where you are able to grant select people the ability to maintain the different tables and parameters that have to do with Kuali. And so there's this new section for export control. And so you can see here we have a number of new maintenance tables that support the module. And you can also kick off a new record by clicking this create link, or you can search for existing by clicking that search button. Clicking create from here would most likely be done by an export control officer, and creating that record gives you a standalone export control project that can then be linked to other records as needed within the system. So it's just one of those ways that you're able to both start a record and get a sense of the configurable tables that are out there. Then the next thing I wanted to show you is just a little bit of how that integration is working between the rest of the research suite and the export control module. So I'm in an institutional proposal. I could just as easily be in an award and show you the same thing. The idea being that when you add an export control record from the export control module, that can actually be done very simply by just clicking on this search button, and you can find that existing export control record and pull that into the compliance page. And what we're able to see from that is that I can see not only the number, I can click the view button in order to navigate to the export control record. And then this approval status you can see is not editable. And that's because what we're going to display to you in this proposal, and eventually in the award, if this proposal were to get funded, is the actual status from the export control record. So you're getting those real-time updates as that export control project moves through its life cycle. The other thing, and I believe Travis referenced this too, and I want to be able to show it to you so you can get a sense of what this looks like. When you select export control from the compliance list, if you have the export control module enabled and you have the right permissions in place, you'll notice that you actually now get this create button appearing, and that's not going to show up if you make another selection. And that create button is because what you're able to do then is not only look up an existing export control project, like I should, like we did down here below, but if you click the create button, what that's going to actually do is navigate you to the export control module. It's going to kick off a brand new export control project. And we can see here, we've got minimal data in place already. It's defaulting to in progress. And if I scroll down here a little bit lower, I can actually see reference to the institutional proposal that was my originating document that I clicked that create from. And so immediately I have a new record started and it's already associated to its point of origin. I can click the view button in both locations to navigate back and forth. And at this point, I'm able to just start creating this export control project and continue on with my work through that workflow. So it's just another way that you're able to start an export control record. And then this last tab that I have set up here is an export control record that I have staged ahead of time. And this is really where I want to spend the bulk of our demo time today, to really take a look at some of the data that can be collected and really get a better sense of what the system can do for you. So we can see, as is very typical for the different modules within Kuali, we have a number of tabs up here across the top. They're all based on different topics. And we consistently make use of supplemental info. So you're able to add in those custom fields as you need. And we also are consistently ending all of our modules with the project actions tab that gives you, again, that very consistent experience for finalizing a record. So as I scroll down in here, we can see our foundational data, which is again very typical for a quality record, for that first tab to have that foundational information in it. So you have a place where you can hand key information like the title of the export control project. For dates, we have our standard date pickers, so you can put in your start and end dates. And then of course, we really start to get into the configurable options as well. So project type is one of those new configurable tables. So I or one of my colleagues who'd be working with you on an implementation would work with you to determine what this list should be and help you get that set up and teach you how to maintain it going forward. So this is your list of all the different kinds of export control projects that you're going to be tracking for your institution. So that's a brand new export control table, whereas we have reference here to sponsor and lead unit, and those are referencing the existing sponsor table that we use all throughout the application. And lead unit, of course, is also referencing the unit with unit hierarchy information that's already used throughout the rest of the application. So we're reusing data whenever it makes sense to do so. And then as I scroll down here further, we can see these associated documents. So in this case, I am associated with both a proposal and another export control project. This associated documents is optional if you have a standalone export control project that's not linked to anything else within Kuali. There's absolutely no need to enter anything down here. It can just be left empty. But you do have the option whenever it's relevant to add awards, institutional proposals, proposal development, or other export control records into that association. And once you've done that, you can see here, again, we've consistently got these view buttons, so you're able to quickly navigate to anything that's associated to this record. And then of course, back here again too. Over here on the People tab, we've got a couple different sections of information that can be tracked. The first is the project person, and that's going to be the one contact person for this export control project. So we can see here that I've got somebody added with the role of traveler. If I were to delete this person and re-enter, we'd see that there would be a configurable list of role options. Much like down here in the unit section, you've got a list of options. So, of course, those are configurable options as well. So we're putting in the roles for both the primary contact and additional contacts as is relevant to you. So for unit, for this person, it's actually showing up in red, and that's because there's a configurable option to be able to give sort of an alert within the system if a specific unit is involved in the export control. And so this unit is in that configurable list, and that's why that's showing up in red, just to give me an alert that can trigger me to do whatever follow-up action I've decided to do as part of my business process when that comes up. And then, of course, the phone and the email are coming up from the person record. So this could be part of that HR feed, or if you don't have an HR feed in place, that can be managed manually locally within the Kuali application. And again, very similar functionality down below where you can put in those additional contacts. And then below that, in this restricted party screening section, this is the area that's integrated with visual compliance. And my guess is a few people are probably wondering, what about other export control screening software? And the answer to that is that at the moment, we are just integrated with visual compliance, but it doesn't need to stay that way. As is the case throughout the software, we always reevaluate functionality and priorities based on need. So if the need were to arise to integrate with another system, we would start that conversation and take a look at what that would take. But as of the moment, we are integrated with visual compliance. And so that would require having a contract with Kuali as well as with visual compliance. And then we have a process set up with them that actually Travis has worked on extensively to have that integration put into place so you can have these systems talk to each other. And so the way that that works is that you're able to, I'll do an edit to kind of open this section up again. And I'm actually going to close these sections just so we don't have so much to look at. So once this is in an editable format, you can put in whatever data you want to search by. So you can, first name, last name, company name, all kinds of different information that you can add to your search. And then once that's been put in, you're able to perform the search. And what that's going to do is give you this search result down below that's telling you, the date of the search, the person who did the search, and the number of matches. And then when you click on this view button, it's going to actually take you to the visual compliance results. And, in my case, I just happen to know that this name is only giving me 2 results. So it gives me a nice, short result to take a look at. But what you're able to do within the system is once you've gotten a search result, you can identify, if you've gotten an actual match, a false match, or no match. But if the search criteria gives you too big of a search result, you can always click edit again, change your search criteria until you're able to refine it to get a search that's meaningful to you. So that is the visual compliance integration. Next, onto agreements. This is a place where you're able to keep track of whether you're the recipient or provider, if there is an agreement in place that needs to be tracked, and who the responsible party is. That's connected to the person table again. Then there's a place to track external institutions. This is tied to the sponsor list. So additional institutions can always be added to that sponsor list as needed. And then you can add as many as you want into the export control record. Down below is a section where you can keep track of review types. So you can imagine, even another export control, but particularly some other kind of protocol that's associated with this that you want to keep track of. You're just going to pick an item from that list and enter in a comment to help, again, keep track of associated reviews that are connected to this export control project. The next tab has to do with events. And this is a section that, is a little bit reminiscent of the negotiation module that some of you may already be using. And so the idea here is to craft your configurable list of different event types. So, probably a lot of the options that are in here out of the box are pretty relatable, but of course we would configure them to your needs. And so the idea then is that anytime something happens that has to do with this export control project, you can come in, pick the event, type in the date that it happened, and then add a comment. And that comment is going to, you can see you can put in a fairly lengthy comment in here, or something very brief, but it's going to give you that way to keep track of all of the different events that have happened to contribute to the export control. The next tab has to do with destinations, and this is really a place where you can track any country that may be involved in the export control project. And you can see that this is a list. So if there are many countries for a project, multiple countries can be added to this list. I picked Afghanistan as an example, largely because it's at the top of the alphabet. But we can see here that because I picked a country that's on a sanctions list, that information is showing up. And similar to the alert that I set for myself on the unit of the primary contact, we can see here that this text is showing up in red to just give me a stronger alert that I want to look into this further because that country is on a sanctions list. And if it wasn't, then the sanctions list would show up empty. But whether there's a sanctions list or not, you've got a nice place here to track the different countries that are involved, the arrival and departure date of the person or the thing, whatever it might be that is interacting with that country, and then a place to type in a comment as well. So let's take a look now at comments and attachments. This functionality is pretty similar to what you'll see in other modules throughout the research suite as well. You can see here that when the comments are added, that the date that it was added and the person who was logged in and made the comment are going to be tracked automatically. So you have this very consistent audit trail telling you, who did it and when. Again, we have a configurable list this time of different kinds of comment types. So you would pick the type that's relevant to you and then enter in the comment. And so you can see a couple sort of simple examples here, but I also put in kind of a silly looking longer comment just to give you a sense of the amount of text that you could add in for your comment if you so chose. And then, of course, very important throughout the suite to have a place where you can add attachments as well. So similar to the comments up above, we are automatically tracking for you the date and the person that an attachment was added, when was it done and who did it. Again, configurable list of attachment types. So we set this up to be what's relevant to you and teach you how to maintain it. So you're going to pick your type in your description, and then upload the file. And so, in my example here, I've got Word docs, PDFs, spreadsheets, pretty much any standard sort of file type is going to be supported and just fine, as is the case throughout the rest of the suite. And you can see here, your ability to view those attachments is supported right there too. Supplemental information is, that very standard tab throughout the Kuali application that's going to let you add custom fields. Because of course, as much as we work to support best practice data entry and give you the kind of logical fields and topics throughout the application, chances are you're going to have a few things that you need to track that are unique to your institution or your state or whatever that might be. And so just like you have supplemental info throughout the rest of the application, this is just an example. You can label things however you'd like. You can have multiple sections or just one section. Here, of course, is just one field as an example. But we can support free text, dates, custom lists, all kinds of different things here to be able to track what's important to you if it's not already accounted for. And then last but not least, we've got project actions. So for anybody on the meeting who's familiar with Kuali software, this should look very familiar to you. We really work to follow those same patterns to make this an easy user experience. So you can turn on validation whenever the time is right, take a look and see if you have errors or warnings to clear. And then down below that, we actually have a section where the application is restating back to the user some of the foundational information from earlier tabs. So you don't have to do a lot of clicking around. So here we can see our primary contact, that contact's email address and their unit. And again, because it was read before as an alert, it's showing up that way here too. And then any countries as well that are on that sanctions list. Again, just to really keep that in focus for us. And then down below that, we have this correspondence section. And what this allows you to do is to create a text file that includes email content, as well as a place to upload documents that can be sent as attachments. And so what you're able to do then with this repeatable correspondence section is, let's say you need to contact, you need to be in touch with the primary contact about an initial visa request. So, again, it's a configurable list. These are just the types of correspondence examples that you might use. We would set them up for your needs. So I'm going to pick this email content of visa request initial, and I've configured ahead of time what that content is going to be. And then I'm going to pick a corresponding attachment or not, depending on if you want to send an attachment. I'm going to put one in called visa request. And then just by simply clicking the send button, what the application does is it sends my standard email with my standard attachment to my primary contact person. And so, and not only does it send that information to that person, but it's also going to track here within the correspondence section, the date that it was sent and what it was that was actually sent to this person. So you always have this audit trail of those system generated messages. And anything that you send through there is also going to be added to the events tab. And so we can actually see here that it's defaulted to provided advice. It was sent today. Here's a reference to that message, and it includes the recipient. So you've got a couple different ways to keep track of that system generated correspondence. And then down here below, you can see that we do have the ability to do ad hoc recipients. At this time, this module does not have a way to have a standard workflow in place, but you can ad hoc it if you need to. And there are a number of notifications that can be generated in the system, including when you link an export control to another module and when an export control record is saved for the first time. And so this, again, is a very common pattern throughout the Kuali modules, where any of these system generated notifications show up in this notification section, and you can see automatically, when was it sent, who was the recipient, what was the subject, and what was the message. And the recipients, the subject, and the message are all configurable and all support tokens. So you can see here, like this one is referencing a specific institutional proposal number, the PI, and so we can configure these notifications to include that information, as well as links back into those records. And then, of course, whenever you're finished with an export control record, you can click that submit button, and then you can always come back into it and click edit again in order to version the record. So that way you're able to keep multiple versions of the same record as an export control changes over time. So that is basically the functionality. I think we can take a few minutes to answer some of the questions that have come in, and then we'll start talking a little bit about what the future holds for the export control module. I don't know, Travis, if you've been able to monitor the questions.
Yeah, so there's a few. And the first question comes from John, and it looks like he wants to know if there are any changes in regulations or application of the regulations. Will Kuali update the program? And I would say generally, yes, we will. We always try to keep things current and up to date. And it looks like related to that, Brian wants to know what the source of the sanctions list is, and is that visual compliance? And that right now is a list that is manually maintained. But we have gotten this question numerous times, and so we would like to integrate with some other system, whether that's utilizing visual compliance a little more, or integrating with some of the data available from the federal government to make those updates immediately available, but they are not right now. So I hope that answers your question. Oh, and we have, okay. So John asked, will there be a Medusa view in other modules like award or IP to see if there is an export control connected? So far, this is not scheduled, but again, just like all the other enhancements that we want to do, this type of thing makes sense. It's just a matter of prioritizing it, putting in the list of development tasks.
And so although it isn't available through Medusa right now, and of course that's feedback we'd love to hear from institutions once they start to implement, if that is something that's needed, we do have this associated document section that functions roughly like Medusa, where if you click on these view buttons, it's going to take you to this export control record or this IP record or whatever else might be listed. And then within those other records on the compliance tab in proposals and awards, there's that corresponding view button you can click. And in another export control record, it would actually show up right here. So definitely not exactly the same thing as Medusa does, but we do support creating those links, being able to view them easily, and being able to jump from one record to the next.
Hey, Beth.
Yes.
Good afternoon. This is Butch. There's one other question that just dropped down from my screen around training. They're complimenting you on how you're doing on export control. Is there similar for my proposals or my negotiations? So I thought I'd let you answer that.
Oh, thank you. So there was a session that actually I did this morning to talk about our pre-award modules. This tomorrow morning, we're going to have one on the post-award, and we've got the compliance modules as well, like every morning at, well, it's morning for me because I'm in Pacific time. So it's 9 o'clock Pacific, noon Eastern. But I would say too, that if you're not able to attend those sessions, or if you even watch the videos afterwards and aren't getting enough information, please don't hesitate to reach out to the presenter. Or actually, reach out to the presenter, or if you're already a customer, you could reach out to your customer success manager. And then Butch, who just spoke, is our VP of sales. So if you're interested in a more in-depth demo, he's a great contact too. And if you're not sure who to contact any of us and we will help get you to the right person.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions come to mind? All right, then without further ado, let's talk a little bit more about where we're going.
And I'll take this, Bess, if you don't mind.
Please.
So it looks like some of our viewers stole my thunder here, but where are we going with export control now that we have this great contribution from CSU? Well, one of the first things that we thought about was integration with some third-party sanction list. Right now, the way that you maintain the sanctions list is very it's very flexible, but it's not automatically kept up to date. So one of the first things we talked about was finding a way to keep that up to date in a convenient way. But maybe there's other integrations, maybe there's other visual compliance like systems that we would want to integrate with, other pieces of software. We're open to ideas. So integration would be one thing that is next on our list. Maybe we would evolve the capabilities of export control that we have, maybe add foreign shipping management into export control, or a better reporting, maybe an enhanced use of visual compliance, or more communications tracking and features along those lines. Those are some of the things that we've identified that we'd thought might be beneficial to improve. Or maybe going into other areas of foreign influence. Export control is just one piece, and this is our first piece of foreign influence software, but maybe there are other areas that we should focus on. So we're open to ideas, and if you just like some people mentioned the sanctions list, I'm sure you guys have ideas and unique challenges at your institutions that you need to solve. And so let's be partners. Let's talk about what you need, and we'll try to build software that will help you solve your problems. Next. And if you have any of these ideas or you want to talk to Butch, who's on the line, his contact information's there, and also visual compliance. And you can see a link to our website so you can learn more about quality research. Next. And thank you very much.
All right,
And now
that
we
works
can-
better if I unmute myself.
Yeah.
So we're basically at the end of our presentation, but we'd love to get more questions. And it looks like some people might be writing in, but this would be a great time too, if you have any questions, by all means, write them in, but you could also take yourself off mute and just speak to whatever is more comfortable for you.
Hi, Bess. I'm Amy Taylor from Southern Connecticut State University. I have a quick question. Just in the early beginning, when you started doing the demo, you talked about creating a project within the export control module itself, right? So you create a project. Can you give us a more concise definition of what you mean by project? So just in my head, I used to use visual compliance at a previous university. So you might use it to search for just debarred individuals. You might use it to search for, as part of the travel, you might use it to double check the ability of certain students, international students, to work on certain projects. But are each of those activities considered a project with a small p?
Yeah,
in the module?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I really meant by project is like, some collection of, basically like an export control thing that's happening, whether it be a trip or data that's being shared, or whatever it might be. And so like sort of an export control document in, to look at kind of the Kuali terms. So a project is basically just like, I've got this export control thing that I need to track, and there might be contracts or travel or, any of those different tabs that we looked at across the top. So we're just kind of considering the collection of data that has to do with an export control kind of goal or activity all being tracked together, and what we're kind of loosely calling a project. You could just as easily call it a record.
Oh, yeah. Record probably actually made more sense to me, but project sort of led you in a different direction. But I understand that. And so for example, if we did an annual search for any updated debarment activities against our PIs, these are the kinds of things that we would be able to enter in as like an annual record. So, I mean, just because I have a PI at my institution now who's not this far doesn't mean that I wouldn't have, 3 years from now, something else come to happen that I wouldn't necessarily know about, but he's already here. So I think of it like a background check. You may do it when you hire me, but 3 years afterwards, if something really should show up on the background check, but you're not running them anymore, then you would never know.
Sure.
No, the debarment checks for our PIs, that's particularly, we certainly do it with new faculty and new PIs coming on board, but it's sort of part of good practice to be able to recheck the debarment status of your PIs as time goes on. So would that would be considered an individual record within this software, because you'd be able to do that as part of the visual compliance link?
I would say so. I mean, to really support what you're talking about, we might want to look at making some other enhancements that would be a little bit more person specific, as opposed to, like if you think about things like the organization table in Kuali, that you've got a place where you can track information that's specific to that organization. So it's not really specific to a sub-award relationship or some particular project. So I feel like this could probably be used for what you're talking about, but that there might be some other functionality that would be needed to truly support that. If you wanted something like added to a person's profile, but I think it all kind of depends on. I think the module has been created in a way that's intended to be really flexible. So if what you saw looked like it would meet your needs, I wouldn't argue with you about it.
Well, what comes
You know
to
what I
mind
mean?
is what comes to mind is something like the city integration, where
Mhm.
you can download the city training that your faculty and your staff have taken, and it integrates into the module, and it attaches to their personal profile. So debarment searches, which are available in visual compliance,
Okay.
right? That kind of data, but it's a different kind of activity, right? It's not as start and end specific as a trip. It's kind of like, well, I need to do a general review to be sure you're not debarred, and periodically I need to recheck that status hasn't changed. So
Yep.
in that sense, debarment review is kind of like city training.
Mhm.
Once a year, we'd want to run the whole list of active people and get any returned. And I think when you were doing your demo, the 2 hits for Harold Smith that showed up were actually part of that, because they related. I only had a moment to read them quickly, but they
Sure.
related to debarment activities or the potential for citation that would prevent that person from interacting on a federal grant. They wouldn't be allowed if they're debarred. So sorry, don't mean to call.
No, not at
everything.
all. I think it's
Um,
a very practical use case. Yeah, and I feel like we do have some things in there now that could help with that, but I can definitely start to picture ways that we might be able to put some additional features in there to support that kind of a use case even better.
Okay.
Just a little bit more elegantly.
This is a great conversation. The developer in me thinks immediately having some kind of job that will produce a report that will go over, the previous people that you search for with visual compliance and get you kind of an updated report on any changes. That's what it sounds like to me, but that's just my gut reaction.
Travis, you're right. So of course, within the award module, you can easily pull a report that gives you the name of all your PIs and co-PIs. That's a pretty simple data extraction. And it's a matter of taking that list and then integrating them into the name search, specific name search over on the visual compliance side. But once that data gets returned, it may or may not be associated with a specific project or application or award, right, but it would sort of reside or hopefully would reside attached to the person, so that you would know or have access to that information on a regular basis. But a standard report that said, okay, here's my active awards and my current people, and we ran them through the database, and here's all the hits that came back. Or, I'm not explaining it really well, like what do you do when the data comes back, because it could be like hundreds of hits long, but the idea is that hopefully you would get a minimal amount and be able to attach it to their profile some way.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes really good sense. And in fact, you could do something such as, highlight the proposals or, the projects, if you will, that are still in progress, because those are the ones you're probably wanting to respond to immediately. So,
right.
Yeah,
Right.
This is good.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else with questions or ideas?
Okay.
Well, thank you again for taking this time to take a look at the export control module. I know Travis and I have had a good time putting it together and are looking forward to continuing to improve it over time. So again, just, please do review this session in Socio. The recording will be available later on. So if you want to watch this again or show it to someone else, absolutely do that. And please don't hesitate to be in touch with any of us with follow-up questions or requests. And yeah, so thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful time at Kuali Days. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting.